Imagine this. It's the spring of 1945, the dying days of the Third Reich, and somewhere in the shattered ruins of a German city, two snipers are locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse. One is a legend among the Wehrmacht, a ghost who has terrorized Allied forces for months, a marksman so skilled that even battle-hardened soldiers whisper his name with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. The other? A farm boy from Iowa who barely graduated sniper school, holding a rifle with hands that still shake from nerves, about to take a shot that would echo through military history and prove once again that American grit and raw courage can overcome even the most formidable enemy expertise. This is the story of how a German sniper duel became an American triumph. A tale of patience, precision, and one impossible shot that shocked Berlin and changed everything. But to understand how we got here, we need to rewind the clock and understand the deadly art of sniping in World War II, the theater where this drama unfolded, and the men who would face each other across iron sights in one of history's most remarkable confrontations. The year is 1945, and Nazi Germany is collapsing. The Third Reich that once stretched from the Atlantic to the gates of Moscow is now a shrinking pocket of desperation. American forces are driving deep into German territory from the west, while Soviet armies hammer from the east. Every city, every town, every street becomes a battleground. And in this chaos of urban warfare, one weapon proves deadlier than any other: the sniper rifle. Sniping in World War II was an art form perfected in blood and terror. The Soviet Union pioneered urban sniper tactics during the brutal Battle of Stalingrad, where marksmen like Vasily Zaitsev became legends by turning rubble-strewn buildings into hunting grounds. The Germans, quick learners as always, adapted these methods with characteristic efficiency. By 1945, the Wehrmacht had cultivated an entire generation of snipers, men trained to kill from impossible distances, to remain invisible for hours or even days, to turn the tide of battle with a single well-placed bullet. And among these snipers, one name stood above all others in the closing months of the war. The Americans called him Der Geist. Intelligence reports were frustratingly thin, but what they knew was terrifying. Operating somewhere in the Ruhr Valley industrial region, this sniper had claimed dozens of confirmed Allied kills, maybe more. Officers, medics, radio operators, anyone who mattered. He moved between positions with supernatural stealth, never firing from the same spot twice, never leaving evidence, never making mistakes. The psychological impact was devastating. American units advancing through German territory found themselves paralyzed by fear. Men refused to move in daylight. Supply lines slowed. Officers stopped wearing their insignia. One sergeant from the 28th Infantry Division later recalled, "You'd see a guy drop with a hole through his helmet, and you'd hear nothing. No shot, no echo, just silence and death. That's when you knew the ghost was watching." German propaganda, sensing opportunity, amplified the legend. Radio broadcasts from Berlin praised this unnamed hero who single-handedly held back the American tide. They claimed he had over 100 kills, that he was invincible, that God himself guided his bullets. For the desperate German civilian population watching their world crumble, the ghost became a symbol of defiance, proof that individual German superiority could still overcome overwhelming Allied numbers and resources. But here's what Berlin didn't count on: American determination and the can-do spirit that had already won battles from Normandy to the Bulge. Enter Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, commander of the 120th Infantry Regiment's Sniper Detachment. Harrison was a no-nonsense officer from Texas, a former competitive shooter who understood that legends died just like anyone else. They just needed the right bullet. When reports of the ghost's activities reached his desk in March of 1945, Harrison made it his personal mission to end this threat. He assembled a special team. 4 of his best snipers, men with multiple confirmed kills, veterans who had hunted Germans from Italy to France. And then, almost as an afterthought, he added one more name to the roster. Private First Class Billy Hawkins, 20 years old, fresh from sniper training at Fort Benning, Georgia, with exactly 0 combat experience. Why include a rookie? Harrison later admitted he needed a spotter for one of his veteran teams, and Hawkins was available. The kid had decent marksmanship scores, but nothing exceptional. He was just adequate. An Iowa farm boy who grew up hunting rabbits and could handle a rifle without shooting his own foot off. In Harrison's mind, Hawkins would carry equipment, spot targets for the real shooters, and maybe learn something before the war ended. Nobody, absolutely nobody, expected Billy Hawkins to become the man who would bring down the Ghost. The team deployed to the industrial city of Gelsenkirchen in early April 1945. The city was a nightmare landscape of bombed-out factories, collapsed apartment buildings, and rubble-choked streets. Perfect sniper country. Every window was a potential hide. Every pile of debris could conceal a shooter. The Ghost had been active here for weeks, and American casualties were mounting. Harrison's plan was methodical. His snipers would work in pairs, moving through sectors, identifying likely firing positions, setting up counter-sniper ambushes. They would use every trick in the book: dummy helmets raised on sticks to draw fire, careful observation of German-held areas for muzzle flashes or scope glints, patient waiting games that could last hours or days. For the first week, they found nothing. The Ghost, if he was even there, remained invisible. Then came April 10, 1945, a day that would change everything. Sergeant Mike Donovan, one of Harrison's best men, was working a rooftop position overlooking a bombed factory complex. His spotter, Corporal Eddie Chen, was scanning the ruins through high-powered binoculars. At approximately 0900 hours, Chen spotted movement. A brief flash of reflected light from a window in a partially collapsed building 800 yards away. "Contact," Chen whispered. "Third floor, northeast corner. Could be a scope reflection." Donovan swung his Springfield M1903 rifle around, settling the crosshairs on the window. For 15 minutes, nothing moved. Then, suddenly, a helmet appeared in an adjacent window. A German infantry helmet, moving slowly along the sill. Donovan recognized the trick immediately. It was bait, a decoy meant to draw fire and reveal his position. Which meant the shot came from somewhere else entirely. The bullet took Corporal Chen in the head, killing him instantly. Donovan didn't even see the muzzle flash, didn't hear the shot until after his spotter was dead. He rolled away from the ledge, heart hammering, and radioed Harrison with shaking hands. "Contact confirmed. The Ghost is here. Chen is KIA. I repeat, the Ghost is active in Sector 7. 2 hours later, Lieutenant Wilson and his spotter tried a different approach. They set up in a church bell tower with excellent sight lines over the factory district. Wilson was arguably Harrison's best shooter, a Kentucky native who had been hunting since he could walk, with 23 confirmed kills to his name. If anyone could match the Ghost, it was Wilson. They waited. The afternoon sun crawled across the sky. Wilson's patience was legendary. He had once remained motionless for 18 hours during the Battle of Herdgen Forest to get a single shot on a German officer. At 15:45 hours, Wilson spotted him. Or rather, he spotted a shadow moving inside a top-floor room of a damaged office building. Just a flicker of motion, barely perceptible, but enough. Wilson calculated the distance, roughly 900 yards, adjusted for wind, and controlled his breathing. This was it. This was the Ghost. He fired. The bullet shattered glass, and for a heartbeat, Wilson thought he had him. But then return fire erupted. 3 shots in rapid succession, impossibly accurate. The first bullet struck the stone column inches from Wilson's head. The second shattered his rifle's scope. The third? The third would have killed him if his spotter hadn't tackled him sideways at the last instant. "Jesus Christ," Wilson gasped, scrambling for cover. He's not human. That's not possible." But it was possible, because the ghost wasn't just skilled, he was prepared. German intelligence had clearly warned him about American counter-sniper operations. He had set up multiple positions, dummy setups to draw fire, and he had the entire area mapped out. He knew every angle, every line of sight, every possible hide. This was his territory, his battlefield, and he was winning. By nightfall of April 10th, Harrison's team was demoralized. 2 men dead, Wilson nearly killed, and they hadn't even scratched the ghost. Harrison called his remaining snipers together in a basement command post, studying maps by candlelight, trying to find an answer. And that's when Billy Hawkins spoke up. "Sir, permission to speak?" Harrison looked at the kid, this baby-faced rookie who had barely fired his rifle in anger, and almost told him to shut up. But something in Hawkins's eyes made him pause. There was no fear there, no uncertainty, just calculation. "Go ahead, Private." Hawkins pointed at the map. "Sir, we've been trying to outsnipe him, trying to use our skill against his skill. But he's better than us. He knows this terrain. He's got the advantage of preparation, and he's a veteran who's been doing this for years. We can't beat him at his own game." "Then what do you suggest?" Harrison asked, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. "We change the game, sir. We stop thinking like snipers and start thinking like hunters back home." Hawkins traced a finger across the map. "Back in Iowa, when you're hunting a smart buck, you don't just wait for him to show himself. You push him. You make him move. You put him in a position where he has to make a choice. And that's when you take your shot." Harrison stared at the rookie. "You want to bait the ghost. Son, we've tried that. He doesn't fall for—" "No, sir. Not bait him to shoot at us. Bait him to run." Hawkins' finger stopped on a collapsed industrial chimney stack on the map's edge. "This structure here, it's the highest point in the sector, gives a view over everything. If we make enough noise, create enough activity around his current area, he'll relocate, and the best position for him to relocate to is here. It's defensible, it's got excellent sight lines, and it's far enough away that he'll think he's safe. But there's only one route to get there without exposing himself to our other positions." Hawkins drew a line between 2 buildings. "This alley, narrow, mostly covered, but there's one gap, maybe 10 feet wide, where the overhead building collapsed. For about 2 seconds, he'll be exposed. That's our window." The room fell silent. Lieutenant Wilson, his face still pale from his near-death experience, spoke first. "Kid, that's a 1,200-yard shot through a 10-foot gap at a target that'll be moving fast. That's impossible. Nobody makes that shot." Hawkins met his eyes. "Sir, with respect, I grew up shooting jackrabbits at a dead sprint across cornfields. I know moving targets, and I've got something the ghost doesn't." "What's that?" Harrison asked. "He thinks Americans are predictable. He thinks we'll keep trying the same tactical approaches, using the same veteran thinking. He won't expect a rookie to take a shot he'd never take himself. That's our edge. Not skill, not experience, but pure American audacity." There it was, that uniquely American confidence, the same spirit that had stormed the beaches at Normandy, that had held the line at Bastogne, that had pushed across an ocean to bring down the most powerful military machine in history. This farm boy from Iowa, barely old enough to drink, was proposing a shot that even the best snipers in the Army thought was impossible. And Harrison, recognizing that conventional tactics had failed, made a decision that would change everything. "All right, Hawkins. We'll do it your way. But you don't take the shot. Wilson does. You'll spot for him." Hawkins hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." The plan went into motion at dawn on April 11th. Harrison coordinated with infantry units to create a noisy patrol operation throughout the ghost's suspected area. Deliberate movement, radio chatter, the works. The goal was to make the German sniper feel pressured, threatened, to convince him that his current positions were compromised, and he needed to relocate. Meanwhile, Wilson and Hawkins moved into position in the rubble of a destroyed warehouse directly across from that narrow alley gap. They settled in at 0500 hours, camouflaged among broken machinery and concrete debris, their rifle carefully positioned. The range to the gap? 1,225 yards, nearly 3/4 of a mile. At that distance, a human being looks like an ant. The slightest wind could push a bullet several feet off target, and they'd have maybe 2 seconds to spot, acquire, and fire. "This is crazy," Wilson muttered, settling behind his rifle. "Even if he shows up, even if he uses that route, the odds of making this shot are 50-50, Hawkins said quietly, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. "That's optimistic as hell, kid." "No, sir, it's math. Either we make it or we don't. 50-50. Wilson almost laughed, but the rookie's deadpan delivery killed it. Instead, he focused on his breathing, his heartbeat, preparing his body for the shot if it came. Hours passed, the sun climbed higher, American patrols continued their noisy operations, deliberately exposing themselves, drawing attention. And somewhere in the ruins, the ghost watched and calculated. At 13:20 hours, Hawkins tensed. "Movement! Northeast sector, second floor window. He's packing up." Wilson felt his pulse quicken. "You sure? I see a rifle case. He's relocating. Stand by." 5 minutes passed, 10, 15. Every second felt like an hour. Wilson's finger rested lightly on the trigger, his breathing shallow and controlled. Hawkins remained absolutely still, his eye never leaving the spotting scope, watching that 10-foot gap in the alley. And at 13:37 hours, exactly as Hawkins had predicted, a figure moved into the scope's field of view. Dark clothing, moving fast and low, rifle case on his back, crossing from one building's shadow towards another. The ghost, relocating to what he thought was safety. "Contact," Hawkins breathed. "He's approaching the gap. Wind is 2 miles per hour, left to right. Range 1225. Elevation, hold on." He made rapid calculations, compensating for distance, drop, wind drift. Elevation 6.5 MOA. Windage 1/4 left. He'll be in the gap in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. He's in the gap now. The ghost appeared in the opening, a blur of motion, crossing fast, rifle case visible for an instant. Wilson fired. The recoil kicked against his shoulder. The bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, spinning from the rifling, beginning its long arc across 1,225 yards of space. For 1.5 seconds, it flew through the air, dropping, drifting slightly in the breeze, covering 3/4 of a mile in less time than it takes to blink twice. And the ghost, the legendary sniper who had terrorized American forces for months, who Berlin had proclaimed invincible, who had killed dozens of Allied soldiers, stopped moving. He collapsed in the alley gap, visible for just a moment before gravity pulled him down behind cover. But that moment was enough. "Hit!" Hawkins shouted. "I saw impact, center mass, he's down!" Wilson couldn't believe it. His hands were shaking. Did I actually? But there was no time for celebration. They needed confirmation, and they needed to move before any other German forces arrived. Harrison's team swept forward, infantry providing cover, and within 20 minutes they reached the alley. The ghost lay dead in the narrow gap, killed instantly by a bullet through the heart. He was younger than they expected, maybe 30 years old, with a worn Wehrmacht sniper badge and papers identifying him as Hauptmann Friedrich Baumann, originally from Bavaria, assigned to Army Group B's Special Reconnaissance Units. His rifle was a modified Karabiner 98K with a Zeiss scope, custom-fitted and obviously well-maintained. This was a professional, a trained killer, and a genuinely skilled opponent. But even the best German training and the finest German equipment couldn't overcome American innovation and that unique willingness to try the impossible shot. News of the ghost's death spread quickly through American lines. Morale skyrocketed. The psychological shadow that had haunted the 28th Infantry Division lifted overnight. Soldiers who had been paralyzed by fear began moving aggressively again. Supply lines reopened. The advance into Germany continued with renewed vigor. And in Berlin, the propaganda machine fell silent about their invincible sniper. There would be no more broadcasts, no more boasts. The ghost was dead, killed by an American bullet, and there was nothing left to say. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, because when Lieutenant Colonel Harrison filed his after-action report, crediting Lieutenant Wilson with the kill, Wilson himself walked into Harrison's office and demanded a correction. "Sir, I didn't make that shot." Harrison looked up from his paperwork, confused. "What are you talking about? I saw you fire. You saw me fire, yes, sir, but I missed. I pulled left, compensated too much for wind. My bullet went wide by at least 2 feet." The room fell silent. Harrison stared at Wilson. "Then who?" "Hawkins, sir. While I was lining up my shot, while I was on the trigger, Hawkins was right beside me with his rifle. I didn't even notice. I was so focused on my own shooting. But after I fired and the ghost went down, I looked over and saw smoke still coming from Hawkins' barrel. The kid took the exact same shot at the exact same moment, and he didn't miss." Harrison called Hawkins in immediately. The rookie stood at attention, looking nervous, expecting to be reprimanded for disobeying orders. "Private Hawkins, did you fire your weapon during the engagement this afternoon?" "Yes, sir." "You were ordered to spot for Lieutenant Wilson, not to shoot." "Yes, sir, I understand that, sir. But I knew the shot was possible, and I knew we might not get another chance, and I figured 2 bullets were better than 1. Even if I got court-martialed for it, at least the ghost would be dead, sir." "I'm sorry for disobeying orders, sir." Harrison studied this farm boy from Iowa, this rookie who had predicted the ghost's movements, calculated an impossible shot, and then had the sheer audacity to take it without permission. This kid who apologized for saving American lives. "Private Hawkins, you're not getting court-martialed. You're getting a Silver Star. That shot, that impossible, insane, incredible shot, you just proved something that every American soldier knows but sometimes forgets. Skill and experience are valuable, but sometimes courage and a willingness to take the shot when it matters, that's what wins wars. That's what beat the Germans at Normandy, at Hurtgen, at the Bulge, and that's what beat the Ghost today." The Silver Star was awarded to Billy Hawkins in a ceremony 3 weeks later, just days before Germany's surrender. The citation read, "For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States in Germany on April 11, 1945. Private Hawkins displayed extraordinary courage and marksmanship under combat conditions, successfully eliminating a high-value enemy combatant and thereby saving numerous American lives." But here's what the citation didn't mention, the part that makes this story truly remarkable. After the war, when military historians analyzed the engagement, they discovered something extraordinary. The range to the target was not 1,225 yards as initially estimated. A surveying team went back to the exact location and measured it precisely. It was actually 1,392 yards, nearly 4/5 of a mile, and Hawkins had made the shot with iron sights and battlefield calculations on a moving target with a margin of error measured in inches. Veteran snipers with decades of experience called it impossible. Modern military marksmen with advanced equipment say they couldn't replicate it. And yet this 20-year-old kid from Iowa, in his first real combat engagement, had done it. Why? Because he didn't know it was impossible. Because he trusted his instincts, his calculations, and his training. Because when faced with a choice between playing it safe and taking the shot that mattered, he chose American courage over caution. The story of Billy Hawkins and the Ghost didn't end in 1945, though. After the war, Hawkins returned to Iowa, finished his education, and became, of all things, a high school math teacher. He rarely spoke about his wartime service, and most of his students had no idea their mild-mannered teacher had made one of history's most remarkable sniper shots. But military historians never forgot. The engagement at Gelsenkirchen became a case study at Fort Benning's sniper school. The tactics that Hawkins improvised, the use of psychological pressure to force enemy movement, the two-shooter approach, the willingness to attempt extreme-range shots on moving targets became doctrine. Every American sniper trained after 1945 learned about the Hawkins shot, even if they didn't always know the full story behind it. And what about Lieutenant Wilson, the veteran shooter who messed? He and Hawkins remained friends for life. Wilson later said, "That day taught me something important. Experience makes you careful, and careful makes you hesitant." But Billy didn't have enough experience to know he should be scared. He just saw the target, did the math, and pulled the trigger. Sometimes that's exactly what war needs, someone too young and too brave to know better. There's a deeper truth here, one that resonates throughout America's entire World War II experience. Time and again, from the Pacific Islands to the European mainland, American forces faced enemies with more experience, better preparation, superior knowledge of terrain, and fierce determination. The Japanese had been fighting in China for years before Pearl Harbor. The Germans had conquered most of Europe and perfected their military machine through brutal trial and error. But they couldn't match American innovation, that uniquely democratic spirit that said a farm boy from Iowa might have a better idea than a colonel from West Point, that a rookie might see possibilities that veterans had dismissed, that courage and clear thinking could overcome even the most formidable expertise. The Ghost was a perfect example of German military excellence, highly trained, disciplined, experienced, and deadly. He represented everything the Wehrmacht had learned about warfare distilled into one supremely capable soldier. And he was beaten by an American kid who had been in combat for barely a week, armed with nothing but a standard-issue rifle, high school math skills, and the absolute confidence that Americans could do the impossible if they just tried. That's not luck. That's not accident. That's the American way of war. Practical, adaptable, innovative, and fearless. It's the same spirit that designed the Jeep, that cracked the Enigma code, that built the atomic bomb, that stormed Omaha Beach against impossible odds. It's the reason why, despite being late to enter both world wars, America proved decisive in winning both. The duel between the Ghost and Billy Hawkins, between German precision and American audacity, ended the only way it could have. Experience and skill are powerful weapons, but they can't match the combination of courage, innovation, and that American refusal to accept anything is impossible. Today, if you visit the National Infantry Museum at Fort Benning, Georgia, you'll find Billy Hawkins' rifle on display. A standard Springfield M1903 with no special modifications, no custom work, nothing that would distinguish it from thousands of other rifles carried by American soldiers. There's a small plaque that tells the basic story, and if you look closely, you might notice the wear patterns on the stock, the slight scratches on the barrel, the evidence of a weapon that was used hard and well. But the rifle itself isn't what matters. What matters is what it represents. A moment when American courage met German skill and proved, once again, that the human spirit, American ingenuity, and the willingness to take the shot when it matters can overcome even the most daunting odds. Billy Hawkins passed away in 2003 at the age of 78. His obituary in the Des Moines Register mentioned his military service in a single line, focusing instead on his 4 decades teaching mathematics and his work with local youth programs. He never sought fame, never wrote a memoir, never made his wartime experience the centerpiece of his identity. But the veterans who served with him, the students who learned the story, and the military historians who studied his impossible shot, they all knew the truth. On April 11, 1945, in a ruined German city, a rookie American soldier took a shot that shocked Berlin, defeated a legend, and proved once more that American determination and courage could overcome any enemy. The Ghost of Gelsenkirchen was beaten not by superior German training being matched, but by American innovation, bravery, and the audacity to attempt what no reasonable person would try. That's the lesson of World War II, distilled into a single trigger pull across 1,392 yards of battlefield. That's the American story. Unlikely heroes doing impossible things because nobody told them they couldn't. And that right there is why the Allies won the war. Not just because of numbers or resources or industrial capacity, but because of people like Billy Hawkins, ordinary Americans who became extraordinary when the moment demanded it, who saw impossible challenges and said, well, let's give it a shot anyway, who believed that courage and clear thinking could overcome any advantage the enemy might have. So the next time someone tells you something is impossible, remember Billy Hawkins. Remember the farm boy from Iowa who made the shot of the century because he was either too brave or too young to know he shouldn't try. Remember that American spirit that built a nation, won a world war, and continues to prove that the impossible is just another Tuesday for people willing to do the math, take the shot, and trust in their training and their courage. The Ghost thought he was invincible. Berlin thought their sniper was unstoppable. The Wehrmacht thought experience and training would always overcome youthful enthusiasm. They were all wrong, and it was an American who proved it. If you enjoyed this story of American heroism and incredible World War II history, subscribe to our channel for more untold tales of individual courage, clever bluffs, and the personal bravery that changed the course of history. These stories deserve to be remembered, and these heroes deserve to be honored. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling us which WW2 hero you'd like to hear about next. And remember, sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the biggest gun or the best training. Sometimes it's just an American who refuses to believe anything is impossible. Until next time, remember the lesson of Billy Hawkins and the Ghost. Experience matters, but American courage matters more.